Welcome to 60 Minutes, a program of news, views, comments, and analysis of issues, reaching you from Voice of Nigeria, Abuja. You can also listen to this broadcast on www.von.gov.ng. As the African continent continues to witness the shrinking of political and civic spaces, heightened levels of corruption, inequalities, curtailment of freedom of expression and association in many countries across the continent, the All African Citizens Convening, organized by Africans Rising for Justice, Peace and Dignity, provides a platform for African citizens to collaborate in the effort to bring positive social change to African communities. To discuss further on this, in an interview with Voice of Nigeria Foreign Affairs correspondent Mnena, Mr. Gideon Adeyemi, a member of the Africans Rising for Justice, Peace and Dignity, spoke on the imperative of building solidarity among the peoples of Africa in a time of convergence of crisis and why it is important to reflect on the journey ahead.
All African Citizens Convening is a convening of citizens, descendants of Africa, to discuss the issues that we confront as a people. The realization is just that we can't leave the conversation to those with power who have too often failed to respond adequately to the challenges that we face. And so it's a convening of the citizens of Africa saying, let us reflect ourselves and find solutions to the challenges that we face. The environmental crisis is with us now. We also see a series of political crises across the continent. We've seen dictators increasing their power in different countries on the continent. Of course, we've seen gains of the resistance movement too across the continent. But, all of these economic, political, environmental, and even cultural challenges are still with us. And it's important that peoples of Africa themselves respond. And this is what this convening is all about. It's about bringing peoples of Africa together, not to wait for those with power, like I said, who have too often failed to respond adequately, but to take the fight and fight it.
Despite the efforts being offered by African nations, international communities to address the political challenges on the continent, why is Africa still struggling with these civic and political challenges?
During the independence struggle, we saw Democrats emerging across the continent. We saw people who hold this ideal of a democratic society to heart. Mandela would say, I have cherished the ideal of a free and democratic society. It's an ideal that I'm willing to live for, and if needs be, it's an ideal for which I'm prepared to die. These were Democrats. But then, after the independence struggle, there was a downward wave of the resistance movement, which I should note was not also without the contribution of some foreign entities who were still trying to keep us dominated, such that some of our best minds who were trying to advance the liberation struggles of Africa were taken out, some were assassinated. We saw how there was a deliberate attack on the resistance movement, and then there's a new form of resistance that is emerging now. We have seen the sprouting of the resistance movement in the form of young youth movement across the continent, in the form of feminist movement, environmental groups across the continent. It is as a result of this affront that what we had afterwards, the coups and counter-coups that we had, and the emergence of what I call a pseudo-democratic, a kakistocratic political system in many of our countries, in which those who now occupy our seats of government are not as committed as one would expect Democrats to be to the ideas of democracies.
Women are at the center of every insufficiency, be it social, political, or economy. What role do you think women can play in feminist leadership and enhancing grassroots good governance?
The feminist movement have been a blessing through their struggles. The feminist movement have learned beautiful ways of fighting, and then the whole resistance movement is now having to learn from the feminist movement today. Any organization that will really advance the cause of justice must take feminist principles as a core part of its organizing model. That implies the involvement of diverse groups, and women particularly, in leadership, ensuring that the right of all of these groups are not trampled upon is part of what I was saying that we have to learn from the feminist movement. Any organization that will make meaningful impact in this age must ensure that women take central leadership, and Africans Rising has been very committed to that, as the Kilimanjaro Declaration has committed us to fight for women's rights. You would see that Africans Rising has been ensuring that even within the movement, feminist principle is well enshrined. The point I was trying to make is that the first thing we must do is to reflect on the challenges. And the climate crisis particularly. Those who have reflected on it has made clear that we must understand that the problem is not an environmental problem, it is a human problem. Because if we continue on the path that we are on right now, the implication is that it will lead to human extinction. If we should hit that catastrophic climate change level, it will lead to human extinction. And like Kumi will say, humans will be gone, the planet will still be here, and the planet will restore itself. Nature will restore itself. I'm saying that the first task for us is to reflect critically, and the product of that reflection must show to us that it's our problem. If we don't deal with it, it will lead to our extinction. And the second thing that we have to do is to take action. And what action can we take? We have to check our energy system. We have to shift from dirty brown unrenewable energy sources to clean green renewable energy sources. So we need massive investment. We have to take necessary action to stop that. For us as a movement, what we understand that we have to do is to build campaigns around these. People are doing that around, and Africans Rising has been trying to connect the struggles of environmental groups across the continent. So what Africans Rising is doing is to connect their struggles. When our efforts are fragmented, we achieve less. So when we can connect these struggles and ensure that our actions must become really disruptive for those in power to listen to us. What experience has shown to us is that those with power will not listen to us easily, and so we have to be very forceful, but forceful in a non-violent way. And I must stress that because Africans Rising is committed to non-violent resistance.
In the course of our discussion, you made mention of the Kilimanjaro Declaration. What is this declaration all about, and how effective has it been since it was declared?
The Kilimanjaro Declaration is the product of the convening of 2016. In 2016, in Arusha, 272 representatives from faith-based organizations across the globe came together to say that we need to reassert the vision of true Pan-African solidarity, of a truly peaceful and prosperous African society that was shared by our founding fathers. When they came together in Addis in 1963, they were talking about the need for Pan-African solidarity, for us to connect as those who are still on the continent, and for us to also connect with those who have been taken out of the continent in the Caribbean, in America. And so 2016 was a time to reassert this vision through solidarity, which will lead to that peaceful and prosperous future that we desire for African people. The Kilimanjaro Declaration is the outcome of that convening. The Kilimanjaro Declaration commits us to expand space for civic and political action. It has 5 thematic areas: expanding space for civic and political action, fighting for women's rights and freedoms across society, focusing our struggles on the right to equity and dignity, demanding good governance as we fight corruption and impunity, and demanding climate and environmental justice. Essentially, the conference understands that our struggle must be holistic. It must cut across all the spectrum of development: cultural, environmental, political, economic, and all of these were enshrined in the Kilimanjaro Declaration. The conference also declared that Africa is a rich continent, rejecting the narrative that Africa is a poor continent. As a matter of fact, Africa is the richest continent underneath the ground, but it has been exploited, and so the bulk of Africans on the continent particularly remain poor today. The conference also declared that our diverse cultural heritage can be a source of repair. Is vital for our healing and the repair of the damage done by neoliberalism to our humanity and environment. The conference also declared that African youth are a critical foundation to building success in our continent and must play a crucial role in building Africans Rising, and of course in building the future that we want. And you will see that reflected in the leadership of the movement. Mostly young people have been privileged in taking up leadership role, and I think the understanding of the conference is that the unmatched energy, optimism, and creativity of young people puts them in a very central place, and for a movement that really wants to bring progress, that really wants to advance the liberation struggle, these young people must be allowed to take a central role. And also the conference declared that the movement must be committed to a decentralized future. Power must be devolved rather than arrogated in the hands of a few. And so the conference recognized that if we are seeking for devolution of power in the society, for a few folks not to hoard power, we must also be able to exemplify that. And so the movement is trying to be as decentralized as possible. And lastly, the conference declared that We must build a citizen movement that is accountable to the constituents that we represent and enforce the highest standard of ethical behavior. So all of these were enshrined in a document, and it is that document that we call the Kilimanjaro Declaration. And you see that every time when we talk, we always refer to it.
Now you've spoken about Kilimanjaro Declaration, what they do, what it's trying to achieve, what they have achieved. Do you feel there is a need for more engagement among citizens on demanding good governance as we fight corruption and impunity?
Definitely. What the experience has shown to us is that those with power hardly give up power easily. What we also know is that when power is arrogated in the hands of a few, prosperity will be difficult to achieve. So power, either in the economic form, in the political form, ought to be devolved. But those who have arrogated that power, they will not let go of it easily. And so it becomes the duty of those who have been disempowered. When power is arrogated in the hands of necessarily some persons must have been disempowered. So it becomes the duty of the disempowered to come together and demand good governance from those who they have entrusted power in their hands, those who occupy the seats of government. We must continue to demand for us to have that more democratic future that we seek. It is the prerogative of ordinary citizens like you and I to stand up and build it and demand that rule of law be followed, that there must be accountability. African peoples must continue to stand up to resist any form of injustices, impunity that they see around.
The Africa we want. This has been on every African's lips. Every citizen of Africa is saying, this is the Africa we want. How can we achieve the Africa we want?
The African dream, as I understand it, is to live in dignity, to live in peace. And to live in dignity, the African want to live in dignity. They want to experience the normal pleasures, live in basic comfort, the comfort that every human should enjoy, should have food on the table at the right time, should have a good place to lay his head, should have clothing to cover his or her body when he or she feels like. But essentially, it's about living as human. I've seen that many young Africans want to connect with their folks all across the globe. The African should not carry a passport that will limit him to travel on the African continent much more than a British or an American citizen is limited. And so the African dream is to live in a manner in which when I'm choosing to travel to either Britain or America, I'm not being forced out by the conditions here. But I'm traveling as a human to see the continent which is my home, as a matter of fact. The African dream is to be able to go to Ghana and not being asked unnecessary questions because I carry a green passport. Whereas somebody who carries maybe a brown passport will not answer the same question. The African dream is to be able to go to South Africa, to go to Kenya without needing to get a visa, so that the Africans, even on the continent, can connect and build solidarity and unity. And it is in solidarity that our strength is increased, that our strength can be sufficient to surmount the myriad of challenges that we face.
The world is going digital. We say that everything is becoming digital. How can digital skills be relevant in the support of activism?
I think for activists to be really effective, we have to master how to use these tools to communicate to the people, to bring the awareness of the injustices that engulf us to the people. All of these tools it's a great opportunity today. That's the way I see it. And I do jokingly ask my friend, I do imagine the likes of Mandela or even Martin Luther King having Twitter or WhatsApp then. Imagine a Mandela hiding somewhere and being able to send a message to 1 million people. He would likely not have been caught when he was caught, And I'm saying we have a great tool today. What is best that we use it for is to bring awareness of the injustices that we see around our people. But I must also quickly say that we must now not think that our activism must end on those platforms. It must just complement our boots on the ground. So we must have our boots on the ground and then use these tools to increase the magnitude of the effect of our action.
Go back to the event, the big event for African Rising,
yes,
as the African Citizens Convening. What is the take home from this event?
It's like I said about the Arusha conference. It was African people coming together to reflect on the challenges. So this is like doing the same thing that the Arusha conference did, bringing our people together again to say, okay, let's think together, let's reflect together on where we are, and then where do we go from here, and how did we get here? So those three things particularly is what's talking about slavery, talking about colonialism, as the effect of slavery and colonialism as it ended. The legacies are still with us. As a matter of fact, and Africans, by the way, I should mention that Africans Rising has a campaign called the Rewrite History campaign, in which we are asking the former colonialists, I don't call them colonial powers, former colonialists to rewrite the wrongs by acknowledging that colonialism was a bigger human crisis.